you know, there's some stories that I want to share. We got some waves. What's up, everybody? I wanted to share a story with you guys today, and that is in part my early diagnosis, and second part kind of where diabetes took me and where I realized I could help and improve upon what was already in place. So back in the day, back in my day, right? I was diagnosed just over 10 years ago. So I've got a full decade of diabetes. Hold up, I think I got this thing. Check this out. Got a decade of diabetes. Show the camera too. If I got my medal that shows that I've had diabetes for 10 years. If you want to apply for that, you can get it at Lilly somewhere on their website. But 10 years I've had type 1 diabetes. And the life that I have now is nothing like what it was when I was first diagnosed. Before diagnosis, I was a collegiate athlete. I was running around campus. I was in a Christian fraternity, so while we were Christian and abiding by the rules, right, it was a lot of late nights and road trips and video games. Like, just spontaneity and carelessness, I think, is a great way of defining how I used to live my life. Adventure, and then I had a bit of a rough month, to say the least, where I failed a few of my college classes. I wrecked my first car. I had to take my childhood dog in to be put to sleep. And I wrapped all of it up with type 1 diabetes diagnosis on December 23rd, 2009. And, that was just kind of the cherry on top that I could no longer eat, apparently. The doctors had told me that I could no longer have sugar. They told me that I was never going to have a normal life ever again. They told me a number of things that were wildly untrue. They told me to expect complications. It was a very scary time for me. A lot of frustration, a lot of uncertainty. Kind of like now we have a lot of uncertainty surrounding us. That's kind of how I felt. Not knowing what to expect except for the worst. With them telling me that my life was essentially going to suck. Like, that was kind of the expectations they set for me. And, it took me years before I realized that that's not what life has to look like with type 1 diabetes. You can still do what you want, you can still enjoy your life, you can still eat sugar, right? You just gotta take some insulin, and there's a number of things that I would have changed about that diagnosis, and I really hope they've gotten better, but unfortunately, with a lot of stories that I've heard, it's about the same. A lot of people telling me that their diagnosis story lines up pretty similarly with mine, where the doctors were misinformed, they gave them very bleak expectations, and it's just this sad time where you were told to expect the worst, essentially, and that life is coming to a screeching halt, and say goodbye to your dreams and passions because you now have a completely separate life as a diabetic. And part of what I do, part of what I love doing, is giving a message of hope, inspiring others, showing them what is possible, right? And that's something that when I was first diagnosed, I didn't have at all. There was no one telling me what was possible, no one telling me that I could do what I want or eat what I want or still be a collegiate athlete, even though I still continued that path. I didn't know necessarily what the dangers were, what the realistic goal was. It was a rough time, for sure. But, what I want to make sure that I am able to communicate to anyone listening is that if that is your story, if you have a similar diagnosis to me, you don't have to be limited by what the doctors told you could or could not do. And of course, we want to listen to our doctors, right? We want to respect the fact that they have medical degrees and they know to what they're saying to a certain extent. But I think it's safe to say, especially on social media, right, that we've kind of found our own path. We look at other people, we look at influencers and see what kind of lives they're leading, what's possible through their lives, and it's incredible to see what type 1 diabetics are able to achieve. We got Olympians, we got people who are leading organizations and people who are doing what they want, following their dreams. And that's something that for me, I didn't even know existed. The type 1 online community, I didn't know it existed for like the first 8 years of having type 1 diabetes. Now, many of you probably know that my little sister was also diagnosed with type 1 diabetes about, I want to say it was like a year-ish, year and a half after I was diagnosed. And personally, that day was probably more rough for me to see her go through that because I knew what the road ahead was for her. I knew that life wasn't going to be the same. And while it is still possible to live a full life, I hated the fact that my little sister now has to go through what I've been going through. And while that was an incredible relationship builder for us, of course I would take it away from her in an instant if I could. However, looking back, silver lining, right? Her and I have a very strong relationship now, and it's incredible to see how we've grown closer together. We've bonded over the fact that we both have type 1 diabetes, and that's something that I don't know if that ever would have happened if she wasn't diagnosed, right? We weren't super close growing up, and that gave us a massive connection point that nobody else had, that enabled us to grow closer together. So for that, I am thankful. But outside of my relationship with my little sister, I didn't really know a whole lot of other diabetics at all. I knew one that was in my elementary school, and all I knew is she had some device hooked up to her and she ate Skittles a lot. Like I thought it was just her favorite snack. And there's a guy on my rowing team in college, and he had type 1. He had had type 1 for a long time. It was a big part of his life, but he lived his life in such a way that you wouldn't necessarily know the impact that type 1 diabetes had on his life, which is cool. But it also meant that he wasn't super available, you know, as a mentor figure, if you will. Like, he didn't necessarily want to teach me, and I didn't necessarily want to learn from him. So there was no community, no bond. And after years of living with type 1 diabetes, realizing that I did kind of feel alone, that I did feel like there wasn't anyone else out there like me, right? I thought type 1 diabetes was super rare, and I mean it is rare, but the way that I felt in my head was that there was nobody else. And if there were people that were letting it defeat them, right? I was still traveling the world. I was still a collegiate athlete and trying to be my best. I didn't think there was anybody else like me still trying to get the most out of life. And it was 8 years after my diagnosis that I finally sat down, typed in #diabetes, and looked on social media. And on Instagram, I remember just seeing hundreds of accounts being like, what? Not only are there other people like me, but it's apparently like the cool thing to do is to have these diabetes accounts on Instagram that are dedicated to type 1 diabetes. I was blown away. I didn't know what to expect. I thought maybe I'd find one or two, but hundreds. It blew my mind. And instantly I felt connected. I felt like I needed to reach out to these people. In fact, the early days of my YouTube channel, one of the first things that I did is I found a way to get the emails of a lot of different influencers and YouTube people that had type 1 diabetes, and I reached out to them individually. Granted, it was a mass email. I apologize, everyone. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to make friends in the beginning. But I sent them all an email that said, hey guys, I want to make a video project that has all of this in it. I was so excited. I was so stoked to find other people like me that I wanted to party with them. I wanted to have this big old YouTube video where we all talk about our type 1 diabetes, and I was so excited for it. And I don't know why, but a lot of them actually responded and took part in the video. I did not, looking back, I didn't handle it correctly, right? Like, I wasn't super personal and like building relationships first. I was like, hey, we should make a video. And they're probably just like, who are you? But we made this really cool video, and it was so much fun. I paid a guy to go edit the video, make it professional looking, and you know, to this day, it's still on our YouTube channel. It's pretty cool. I really like it, but it shows how excited I was right off the bat to get involved in the type 1 diabetic community, right? But over the time that I was, you know, searching through and trying to find new friends that were all living with type 1 diabetes, I realized that, you know, two things. One, this is incredible. And community online for type 1 diabetics makes us stronger. We are stronger together, 100%. But I realized something, like the second realization, if you will, that I think it had room for improvement. There's something I might be able to do to create a stronger community. And so I got to thinking, I'm like, all right, there's this thing, I want it to be this way, but I don't know how to make it that way because I'm not this big fancy influencer, and I'm not, you know, I don't have the strings that I can pull necessarily to get everyone involved, but I know there's some way we can make this better. And so I got to thinking, I laid out a plan of like, okay, what do I need to make this community, to make this thing where people get even stronger connection, where people get education while they're receiving community, right? Where people receive inspiration and motivation as they're achieving their goals, and they get their accountability from this thing. Like, I realized on social media, we connect, but we don't necessarily keep each other accountable, right? It's more of a, let me show you my diabetes so we can all feel one. We can all feel together in this fight, but it's a little bit hands off, right? Like, we don't know each other well enough quite yet to keep each other accountable or to reach out, check in, there we go, on each other and see how we're doing. And there are a few of those relationships that I've built, and those I am forever grateful for. But for the masses, right, it's not common for us to have that kind of a relationship with other diabetics in the space. And so I thought, what if I created a core group of people where we all can come together, have that tight-knit community where we're able to keep each other accountable, but also pull from other resources that I've been able to build over the last couple of years. Whether it's medical professionals, whether it's people living with diabetes and telling their real stories. And in the beginning, it started out as a podcast, right? We have our Pardon My Pancreas podcast, where we bring in experts, we interview people, we chat with them about the real highs and lows of diabetes. And that was an amazing success. We were able to bring people the information from medical experts, bring them information of strategies that people are using in their lives. And that was an amazing starting point, but I still recognize that there was a little bit of a tweak that could be made. And I was like, I don't think I can make it on the podcast, because the nature of podcasting is you don't have a direct connection to your audience. You can't interact, you can't comment. And so I was like, all right, what else can we do? What else can we add to this to make the community aspect of it? So we started a Facebook group. I was like, okay, cool, let's go to Facebook. We're gonna make a bunch of people go in the same area and all hang out together and discuss diabetes strategies and management and tips and tricks. And initially, it started off amazing. People jumped in, they were commenting and posting links to like Beyond Type 1 and JDRF, and we're all sharing what we've learned. But it wasn't too long before, like most other groups, unfortunately, that I've seen, some negativity started presenting itself. People started to complain and become a bit more focused on the negative side of diabetes. I'm like, darn it. Like, this is, of course, natural, right? We go through frustrations. It's a tough disease that we fight 24/7. But I don't want a community that is focused on the negative, because then that drags us down. And so I was like, okay, got to make another tweak. What else can we do? So we decided to go for a pilot group, a smaller membership, where you have a group of people that are focused on the positives, led by a community manager, which in this case was me, and we had specific community posts that would pull out the positivity, if you will. So every week we'd start saying, okay, Friday, it's gonna be our win Friday. What was a win you had this week? So it forces you to focus on the positive, forces you to pull out the good that you were able to achieve or find in the last week. So, okay, how can we make it more of a community? Every Monday we started having discussions on what can we talk about to pull out the conversation, the engagement of, let's chat about insulin prices, right? That's a hot topic. Let's chat about pump versus MDI. That was a big one, right? So community, the positivity. And then I said, you know what? Let's introduce a coaching aspect. So I started going live once a week, every Wednesday, to chat, Q&A. What can we really chat about to help people overcome their obstacles? To help people fine-tune their basals or figure out why exercise is so frustrating and how we can fix that. And that is when it really started to take off. We started focusing on the positives and be able to work towards our goals while we supported one another. And then that's when the light bulb, bing, like went off. It was like, oh my gosh, there's one more aspect that I want to bring in. The one thing that I couldn't get initially, but I used the podcast to bring in, and that was the medical experts and people who are experts in their fields across different areas of life. It's like, oh, this is going to be incredible, right? So what I ended up doing is I brought people in that I was interviewing for the podcast, and I let the group have direct access to them through Q&A stuff, right? So it's like we interview them on basal testing, and then after the interview with the podcast, I say, hey, hold on a second before you go. I want to let my members chat with you. And they got the direct access to the experts that I was able to bring in because of whatever connections I've established. And it, oh my gosh, it created this insane atmosphere where it was a community-based education center for type 1 diabetics to learn and achieve their goals. I mean, it could not have gone any smoother. Now, granted, this took 8 months to like test and change and test and tweak and test and change. And there's all these different feedback loops we had to go through to make sure that it was growing in the aspect that the type 1 diabetic would find the most value, right? Not just from a community standpoint, but from a growing and implementing standpoint. That's what the accountability is for. I mean, if information alone was enough, we could all just read a book and be different, right? But it's not. Information alone does not lead to change. You have to actually implement what you learn in order to see that change. And then that is where the accountability comes in, where it's like checking in. Hey, how's it going? How have you been doing with your exercises? How are the blood sugar tracking days going? Where you're tracking for your basals, right? Like that is what makes it so powerful. And that is what led into the creation of the updated version of the Warriors Tribe. And guys, that is what we've been launching this whole week. If you've seen our posts, our stories, that is why I am trying to get the word out about this updated version of the Warriors Tribe that includes all this crazy stuff with like workouts and recipes and coaching, and there's an assistant coach now, and the experts coming in to like map out different success routes for type 1 diabetics, and the community and the accountability. There's just so much going on. I can't even put it into words. Like it's something that has to be experienced. And what's cool is that the people who have benefited the most from this are the ones that I wanted to help because I couldn't help myself in the past. You see what I'm saying? The people who benefit the most are those who are newly diagnosed within the last couple of years, because they're in that phase where they're still trying to figure it out. They feel alone, they feel scared and frustrated and confused because there's so much going on. And this enables them to have the proper guidance while being supported in an online community. It's just, I'm so happy for the people that are in there right now and the amount of support they give each other and the encouragement that I see in there on a daily basis. It blows me away. And it's something that I wish I could have had for myself. But since I can't go back and tell my past self this, I can't give this to somebody, to myself who was diagnosed in 2009, what I can do is I can tell you guys about that today. And tell you that if you are struggling, if you wish you had community, if you feel alone, frustrated, or scared, this is the community. This is the one and only resource of its kind to bring you community, accountability, and education from a scientific perspective. And so I wanted to invite you guys. This is the final hours. The Warriors Tribe is going to be closing pretty shortly, but the Warriors Tribe, built up for type 1 diabetics by a type 1 diabetic, you get both sides of the equation. And that's what I wanted to welcome you guys into. So if that sounds like something that you could benefit from, which pretty much everybody could benefit from, a little buddies, right? With community, with accountability, with striving towards a similar goal with like-minded people, then I want to invite you to join the Warriors Tribe. Now, if you guys are interested in checking that out, we are keeping the price super duper low, which is insane. We want to make sure we get everybody in while we can, because we're closing the doors again. They're going to be closed for the next 3 months while we take care of our new people and make sure that they're on the right track. We walk with them hand in hand, make sure everybody is guided along. And if you want to find out before the doors close how you can jump on that, it's going to be at thewarriorstribe.com. Or if you're on Instagram, you can go to the link in our bio and check it out ASAP. There's a timer on that page, and when that timer hits 0, the doors will be closing again so that I can focus on our new members and focus on welcoming them in, which I'm super excited to do. It's always fun welcoming new people in, especially because new faces mean new stories, right? They mean new journeys ahead. They mean new challenges for me as a coach to help walk people through and to bring them to success. New faces, it's what drives the world, right? Like, it's a fresh idea, fresh perspectives, and fresh challenges. So if you're interested in that, go to thewarriorstribe.com ASAP, or go to the link in our Instagram bio. I want you guys to jump in there, find all of the tools that will benefit you. And while it is a membership, there are 2 options. One of the options is to pay monthly and cancel whenever the heck you want. There is no commitment at all. It's risk-free. Like, that's why we made it that way. That way you can grab what you need, and then if you got what you needed and you don't need the community aspect, then you can bounce. You don't need to stay. But there's also a second option where you can do a one-time payment for lifetime access. So if either of those options sound great to you, if you're newly diagnosed or just looking for some friends in an educational environment where we are all action takers and striving to be better versions of ourselves, then I wanted to invite you guys to join the Warriors Tribe. So last time, I want to mention to you guys, go to the Warriors Tribe, thewarriorstribe.com. I will see you guys in there. Go check out the link in our Instagram bio if you don't want to type in the URL. But it's an absolutely incredible resource, and I cannot wait to bring all you guys in there. I know it benefits every single person that's been in there, and it's an absolute joy for me to watch people as they succeed and grow in their type 1 diabetes management and their confidence, but also just as people, right? So I'll see you guys in there. Have an awesome